Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Trish.
Mrs. Brew?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Mr. Marraro?
Here.
Mr. Pop?
Here.
Move on to the approval of the agenda. Is there any questions on the agenda? If not, I need a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda. Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Marraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 15th and the special meeting of March 23rd, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion we approve regular meeting of March 15, 2021.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Marraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
I make a motion we approve special meeting March 23rd, 2021.
Support.
Mr. Marraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Approval of manifest 2021-06. Scott, do you have any questions?
I have nothing for tonight, ma'am.
Brett?
I have none, thank you.
Jeff?
None.
Rico?
None.
Did we have any answers to previous manifest questions?
I don't believe we had any outstanding questions from the last meeting. No, we didn't.
Anyone in?
Wait. I make a motion we approve manifest 2021-07 in amount of $442,000, $674.14.
Support.
Thanks.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Marraro?
Yep.
Anyone in attendance wishing to address the council on agenda item only shall do so at the podium. Anyone on Zoom wishing to address the council on any item will be unmuted and given an opportunity to make their comments. For participants on Zoom, you can use the raise your hand feature and the host will initiate the unmute. For the telephone participants, hit *9 to initiate a request to speak. In either case, state your name and address for the records. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have anybody? Okay. We'll move on to public hearing. Ordinance 443. An ordinance to allow marijuana establishments within the city of Norway pursuant to the Michigan regulations and taxation of the Marijuana Act. Okay. Motion to go into public hearing?
I make a motion we go into public hearing.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Marraro?
Yeah.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. The public hearing tonight is set up to review Ordinance 443, which is our legal marijuana ordinance, establish provisions for having legal marijuana operations within the city limits. We've had a number of workshops dealing with the ordinance, and so tonight we're having a public hearing to go over what we currently have. Attorney Carlson has done lion's share of the groundwork on this ordinance. Just remember that it's a two-part process here. We did a good part of the first part in the zoning code where we established the areas of operation and the types of operations. And this is the enforcement side of the ordinance dealing with the applications and a lot of that upfront work. So what we're going to be putting up for public hearing tonight is the discussion of that, of our draft. The draft was available on our webpage for public viewing or a copy at the City Hall. And I guess I'm going to kind of throw it over to Attorney Carlson, and he can give his 2 cents before we actually get into the hearing portion of this.
Thank you, City Manager. As council knows, we've been working on this now for some time. We've gone through a few working drafts of this matter. I would suggest that actually this is what a three-part process. Going through the zoning ordinance issues, this is now the ordinance for the enactment and the enforcement. The third step is what Ms. Anderson and I are working on. We talked today and we started to work back and forth with some of the inner workings of the guts of how to enact this and how to give personnel guidance and follow through the rubric with the administrative process, with the timelines associated with it. And we're making a lot of progress on that. I think that we're getting a little clearer picture of what needs to be done once this ordinance is actually enacted. And we've been working, and I think we're going to have to come together for maybe one more work session to get some council input. But based upon what we've already talked about, based upon what we've already discussed, I think it's fair to say we have a pretty good idea of where council's coming from and some of the ideas expressed in the past. So I don't know that it's necessary for sure to have that next working session. But I would suggest the next week or so, we'll have a better idea. I've provided Mr. Anderson a number of documents we have been working on since our last meeting, trying to put in effect, kind of, again, the guts, the administrative side of things. That will have to go into place once this ordinance is effective at some point down the road. Based upon the ordinance itself, as you will see, this has been evolving now for a couple different times. I think one of the some of the highlights that, as council noted, the permits for the grows and processors that indicated reflected on our discussions would allow for 2 facilities in our community and 1 micro business permit. As far as the standard, the time frame that we chatted about, I think that we've been able to clean those up a little bit with working on that next step and getting that in place. I think if I remember correctly, I think some of the numbers we were using in the past, I think we had like a 60-day enactment, which actually was a 15-day waiting period, turned out to be a 75-day. I think speaking with Mr. Anderson, I think we can move that along because, again, making quite a bit of progress on the internal documentation necessary for the staff to facilitate this. When I say internal documentation, I mean, you've got the ordinance, we still have to develop our rubric and finalize our rubric to score these applications. We have to have the application itself finalized. We want to make sure we have all our ducks in a row, our correspondence to these entities that are putting forth their applications, the process for providing the applications to people who are asking for them, the zoning requirements, the zoning approvals, making sure we have something in place with the committee that's going to be required to score the rubrics. That will be no small task. My understanding with talking to other municipalities, the individuals or the groups that are interested in coming to our community, this isn't their first rodeo. The council waited in the past to make sure that lets them things work themselves throughout the state. I would suggest that most of the individuals or corporations that are looking at coming in, they already have their ducks in a row. This is not the first time that they've applied for a municipal license, so they have a pretty well streamlined process. So because they have a streamlined process, I think it's incumbent upon us to have our process in place, ready to go, and get as efficient as possible. And I think we're just about getting to that point where we're going to be there shortly with the side of things here, kind of putting the last touches on. As far as, and along those lines, I think we reduced and looking at and accepting, acknowledging or contemplating that we weren't going to approve this evening. We were able, and I think it's reasonable, to reduce down the application period. Once this is enacted, it will take 15 days for enactment. Then there'll be a 45-day kind of preparation period. I think if we recall, that was at 90 or 60 last time. So that's been, we're dropped down to 45. I think that's reasonable. And then the application period, I think at one point we were talking about a 90-day application period. I think it's fair to say that that's an extended period of time to have an application period out there. I think 45 days is more than enough time. If entities want to submit an application, there'll be this initial application period, and there'll be a 45-day period that entities can, facilitate and put forth their applications. At which time it will be closed, and the committee will be required to score the rubrics and make the decisions accordingly from that point forward. As far as the remaining information, there hasn't been a ton of changes that have been evolved here over the last couple of weeks with input from council. I'm not sure if the council has any questions per se, but I am working. One of the things that I've looked at again, this is again the ordinance. One of the things I found, and again, digging deeper into this and looking at other municipalities, that I think will be helpful on the other side of things from an administrative standpoint, which will be coming forward to council hopefully next meeting, was related as one package and we present the whole thing. A lot of municipalities have developed internal operations policies to guide and help facilitate a uniform process to guide staff for the school. Basically what you're doing is creating a mini, not a department per se, but they're creating a whole process from scratch, sort of, from us. But these policies that I found that are in the larger cities, for instance, have developed a start point and an end point from the time of adoption of the ordinance to accepting applications to appointments of the committees and an internal policy procedure that helps guide personnel through the whole sequence of events. And what I've done is found a couple of different ones that I thought were very well written from some of our larger brethren around state, and have begun kind of modifying those for our purposes so that, again, we're not reinventing the wheel, but adopting what's tried and true and what's worked in the past. And I think that'll help, and I'll provide that. And I would suggest that it would be helpful for council to adopt as an overall policy of enactment, along with this ordinance, additional policies, some additional documents down the road. But for tonight's purposes, this ordinance, I think has been evolved to the point where we've taken input from council, and is reflective of what council has directed us to draft. Questions?
No questions? At this time, I can open it up to the public if anybody would like to come up and say anything.
Step up.
My name is Matt Erickson. I am business partners with Levi Danielson. We're both local caregivers here in the area. I personally have been a part of the legal marijuana industry for the last 6 years out in Colorado. So I've seen it grow from just newly legalization up in 2014, I believe, all up until I left in 2019. I've been a part of the industry all through those 5 years, not just with the same company, other companies as well, just as a grower, as a bartender assistant, as a manager, as a metric compliance, stuff like that. I've done a lot within the industry in Colorado. A couple questions, and I've seen a lot of the bricks as well. And a couple questions I had. I know none of this is set in stone, but a couple questions I had on the rubric. Can I ask for these questions? All right.
You can ask.
As far as distance between churches, schools, city parks, stuff like that, is that going to be a bird's eye view distance, or is that going to be a mile per mile distance, or how is that going to be drawn up?
Well, we're really not done with the whole ordinance.
Okay.
Grant, did you want to answer that, or you want to wait till the ordinance is ready?
I guess what I would say, I'll kind of write them down, these questions, and take them, consider them. Maybe after the meeting, I'll try to chat with you a little bit, and just sort of so it's orderly and.
And that might go faster too.
Yeah.
There's a couple questions.
If I could just add a little bit to that, though. Typically, we see those distances in zoning to be straight line, bird's eye, straight line, point to point.
To the property line.
property line to property line, so that, you know, you're avoiding the, whatever topographies and all the other stuff, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, one other quick question. We were going through the Iron Mountain rubric and colors as well. The one thing that really was cool about Iron Mountains in the beginning was they had it kind of like they really wanted the local caregivers and local establishments to do this in the industry. I know, Brad, you were saying that big box stores that are mainly established already, they're gonna come in here and offer you guys some fancy deal, and as far as we'll do this many employees and this much, you know, money and revenue and stuff like that. I was just wondering and hoping that maybe you guys might have something that is gonna make it fair for all of us, you know, for all caregivers, especially local caregivers that wanna see this town grow and that have been growing up here. And at the end of the day, Loom, Rise Up, and all those big names, they don't really care about the EP. I personally think it's the money thing. We would love to rebuild the schools, we'd love to rebuild the roads, we'd love to finish, you know, put Nice Kingdom, you know, rebuild, we would love to do all that stuff. I personally think that those big name dispensaries don't really care. They'll put it in there to whatever makes you happy to get the license, and that's basically it. Levi's been graduated here from Norway. I graduated in Mountain, or Kingsford, excuse me. And yeah, we just really appreciate at least some fair play here. Not saying there isn't going to be, but in Iron Mountain, there's a lot of horrible things that were said. They're great things that were said at the beginning, and a lot of horrible things happen at the end. And those locals that were not too promised, but that were at least given a fair chance, didn't get that fair chance. And then, next thing you know, we have Bloom and Rise Up, which are all over the place, coming in, and no one, you know, local. So I guess that would be all I have. Our company is definitely, we are pre-approved through the state of Michigan as a Class A growing facility, so we do have a pre-approval through the state. As far as that goes, so maybe if you can put in a rubric, you know, points for caregivership, points for pre-qualifications or pre-approvals, stuff like that. Those are other rubrics that I've seen as well through the state. I think the other questions I can just talk to you right after. Yep, that's fine. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else?
Nobody online.
No. Does the council have any questions or comments? Do we have a motion to go back into regular session?
Motion, we go back into regular session.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. Appointment, Planning Commission, Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. If you remember last, in December, we went through and we made appointments, we advertised and made appointments for all of our boards and committees. We do that on an annual basis, and we picked out the term, you know, based on the term limits that are due at that point. We had one seat on our planning commission that was open. We didn't have enough applicants. And we received a couple weeks ago an application from Laura Hyde-Smith. She lives in town. She's interested in serving, and we're pleased to get her application. So we're putting it forward to council to approve Ms. Hyde-Smith to sit on our planning commission.
Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that Laura Hyde-Smith be appointed to the City of Norway's Planning Commission to fill the vacant seat with a term expiring in December of 2023.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Move on to presentation, Dickinson Trail Network. William Morgan.
I go by Jason, but
Okay. Welcome, Jason.
does anybody need a copy of this? So have you all had time to review it? You want me to go up through everything, or just gonna hit the high points?
Just hit the high points, and if we have questions,
So we kind of got the vision map of where we'd like to go with our establishing a network, and then our previous accomplishments, which, mainly centered around Marion Park, and then last year into the Piers Gorge area, and up on the Norway Hill here, and over to, the school forest right to the east of Strawberry Lake. So this year we're finishing up on that school forest property, just a little bit of finished work. It's all really rideable right now. There's a bunch of kids there yesterday riding, so that's kind of cool to see. And then we have a 3-mile loop planned near Pine Creek Lake on the other school property that we had approved last year with COVID and not being able to get large groups together. It kind of hampered everything, as you guys well know. So that's on the list this year as well. And I'm on page 7 here. And then the third bullet point there is, one of the reasons we're here is to seek approval to construct a trail leaving the North Strawberry Lake parking lot, which would connect up to that school forest to the east here. We've already got approval from Dr. Hayes to access through his land. I'm actually already building up there on that. So this would just be a small piece to run pretty much parallel with the bike path to get you into that parking lot. And then we put our trailhead there, which that would draw everybody to park there and, ride to there or ride to the Cyclops loop up behind your place there, Brett.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of it. And then we're also looking at an alternate line on the Norway Hill. Still some issues to work through with the mine inspector there. But I walked it with him last fall. He's pretty much on board. We just got to get together one more time and address a few of his concerns around the safety of it. And then the only other thing that would really affect the city would be if we were able to extend our, what we call our lower Cyclops Trail and connect it to Norway Spring. I haven't pursued any agreements with it. It would take either 2 private landowners or railroad approval to get through those 2 lots that are in between where we're at now and Norway Spring. So I just haven't had time to tackle that, but that is another thing we'd like to get done this year if possible.
The railroad stuff, Jay, is just, rarely tough.
Yeah.
Rarely do they
that's why
grant anything.
My first approach would be to talk to, I know Al Schultz is one of the landowners there. And I'm drawing a blank on the other one. I think it might be a Bilski.
Yeah, Miss Bilski.
Is it? So that would be the first approach, because we could literally, take 24 inches right on the line there, and it would be a really good connection. It would tie you right to that spring, which is just a great spot to stop off and get a drink before you climb back up on top of Norway Hill. So it would be ideal. So like I said, we'd like to add a little kiosk, kind of like we got at Marion Park, at that north parking area, so you kind of have a map and some direction where to start from there. Other than that, the next slide just kind of showed the map, pictures of the parking area and pictures of the OG trailhead in the park. And then the Pine Creek Lake stuff is on page 11. And then just kind of the basics of trail building and sustainability. I think over the past 3 years, our trails are holding up. I mean, we're showing tons of use. I think the slide 16, there's some data I pulled from some free apps, and it's not a true number of users. Not like if we had farmers on the trail, but a small percentage of trail users are using these apps, and you're seeing over time the increase of traffic. I mean, last year we had 1,162 trail check-ins versus 262 the year before. So the work's paying off. We just got to keep connecting. That's the real thing that's going to draw people, is having a big network where they can get on their bike and ride and not have to get on a road for 2 miles to hit another trail, So, and it's working in other places. I just spent a week in Bentonville, Arkansas, which they claim to be the mountain bike capital of the world. And, you know, it's early off-season there. One day, it was 900 people through their checkpoint at the start of the trail. They had counters, so.
What was that?
Bentonville, Arkansas.
Bentonville?
It's, the
Home of Walmart.
was
Oh,
also known
yeah.
as, so those guys sunk a ton of money in there.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. My kids had a blast, so.
We really appreciate the update, and I want to thank you and everybody who's been working on this, and I've been, you know, seeing people using the trails and that, and I just think the city really appreciates what you're doing and helping out the community to get people to come into our community.
It's selfish too, I like riding, so. But it's good to see people using them.
Nothing but positive feedback on them.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Jason, how many?
Support to move forward with.
Yeah, just as long as everything with, like, when you have your workers and everything, that they're still under
Yep.
your, you know, that the city's not liable, that's the big thing.
Do we have to vote on that again when he comes with the addition of it, or no?
We should have an agreement.
Yeah.
We should add that to the agreement.
Yeah, we could just add it to the existing land use agreement.
I would vote on it.
Yeah, we'll probably, when you get ready, before you're gonna do it.
Well, I'm ready to be building off of Strawberry Lake like next week. So I'd like to have that connection done as soon as possible because that ties us to the city and provides that access. So, and like I said, I'm building on Doc Hayes' land right now.
Okay.
He approved that like 3 weeks ago, so.
We need an agenda. This is just a presentation. We can't really vote on this. Or can we?
I mean, you can make a motion anytime. I mean, that's up to you guys, how you want to handle it. If you wanted to wait.
Yes or no?
Officially approve.
What's the best way?
I think, you know, it's right on the edge of parliamentary appropriateness, but I think something like this, what council has done in the past, is give some guidance and pre-approval, but I think probably on the edge, you know, I mean, it's not the end of the world because we already have an existing agreement with these guys, and it was simply an amendment to the existing agreement. But, you know, from a shirt and suspenders and bow tie perspective, it's probably better to wait just a bit. But council can give preliminary indications through comments to get moving and be ready to roll, and maybe make the amendments and get back to where you have a formal approval the next meeting.
Can we do a special meeting on Zoom or something coming up here?
No, because they didn't give us the authorization to go past April 1st.
I got plenty of other stuff to do. I just wanted to prioritize that, but I mean, whenever we can push it through, it's fine.
Yeah, because we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, the terms and conditions are set. I mean, it's just a matter of location.
Yeah, just
We just have to add the locations into the
Yeah.
values.
Yeah.
Okay.
into the
And it's
existing.
always better to do that ahead of time so that you know what the location is rather than just speculative, you know, in the air. I was gonna ask you, how many miles of trail have you built to date, constructed to date in our Norway area here? Not Millie Hill, here.
Here, roughly 23, 24. There's some varying states of completeness order, that's why I'm kind of hesitant, but.
That's okay, yeah, I mean, you're working on
There's about
24
15
miles.
miles in the south
Yeah.
side of Norway, and roughly 9 on the north side right now, so.
I'm just pointing out the amount of work that's been done over the last couple of years.
That's completed, so what do you think you got left?
I mean, we want to eventually try to head north on the state land and have, like, adventure style riding where you can go off and ride at Kearney Lake or Rock Down, so.
Oh, wow.
We gotta work for a while if we want, but we gotta be able to maintain it, there's only
Yes.
a few guys doing it, so. We'll find our limit eventually, but right now, everything's working pretty good.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'd like to have 30 miles around town, would be a nice, good number, and then some nice branch off trails from there and connect up to other areas.
Yeah. That would be nice.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Move on to communications, approval special event application, Vulcan Norway Loretto Lions Club, Mr. Anderson.
So we have pretty much an annual request. Last year, we didn't because of COVID, but we're starting back up this summer, the Lions Club picnic event at Marion Park. It's appropriate for council to approve the Lions Club to utilize the city's property, specifically the pavilions, for the picnic. So their picnic is on Sunday, July 11th.
Any questions? If not, I need a motion.
Motion to approve a special event application for the Lions Club annual picnic.
Support.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes,
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Minigini?
Yes.
and hopefully they can have it. Approval of special event application, citywide rummage sales.
Another annual application for council's review and approval. This year, the event is going to be scheduled for May 22nd.
Do I have a motion?
I make motion special event application for the citywide rummage sales be approved.
Support.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Minigini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
One comment on that, if I should, or if I could. Can we post the rules several times somewhere, Mr. Anderson? Like the rules that are in place on this recommendation?
Yes, we can.
Like, put it on the TV channel?
Yeah,
Yes.
somewhere, just so we post the rules that are listed there.
Yeah,
Maybe even in the May letter that we put out?
absolutely, good idea.
Thank you.
Move on to property purchase request, Oak Crest subdivision, lot 1.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's part of our property sale policy that if council approved earlier this year, the sale price listing for the properties, and out at Oak Crest Drive, we did approve properties to be sold at $19,900. We did get a request in for the purchase of lot 1. Now remember, we flipped the numbers from previous years. One is actually starting on the total on the west end, and it's working its way back. So this is the farthest lot along Oak Crest Drive, the farthest west, and the request is for $15,000. All other conditions are the same.
Any questions? If not, I need a motion.
All terms apply here, Grant, Mr. Carlson? All the same terms apply to this lot as our normal sales, correct?
Yes.
With the 2-year deal and everything like that?
These are flat commissions, correct?
They're flat commissions because they don't, there's a
Understand.
provision.
I just want to know if they're flat commissions.
They're flat because of the price range.
Yeah, I think we did either or, whatever was the lower amount.
Right.
I'm not crazy about that, but.
Make a motion that the petition be approved for a sale price of $15,000.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Minigini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Sturgeon Falls Hydro Unit number 4, change order number 1.
Okay, so on this particular request, unit number 4 is roughly complete. Before we finish up, there was a request from contractor and the crew to take a look in consideration for making some substantial repairs, actually a reconfiguration of the support structure down in the pit itself. Mr. Hagee's here tonight. He can give you some additional details on it, but rather than watering back up, we wanted to get the council's consideration on this price. It's for $10,000. It's a time and material price. And we identified this actually a while back, that we've had problems with the bracing. It's actually not in the right configuration currently, and so it needed to be configured so that the loading is done properly on the bracing. We think that once we complete this project, that our problems with cracked welds and cracked bracing will substantially decrease, if not be eliminated.
Any questions?
Oh, I have questions. Scott, it says in the write-up here, the repairs are basically complete, however, as per the request, it is recommended that the stabilizer arms should be replaced. The arms have been a problem over the years. Why is this first coming to our attention now, when we knew we were going to do this project, right?
Yes.
Again, and now we had a $10,000 overrun, when we knew there was issues with the stabilizer arms.
So, we knew there was an issue with the stabilizer arms all along, but there was a little bit of a conflict as to how robust you want to make them. Because the way the machine vibrated before, there was concern that if we make these things really rigid, what are we doing to the concrete infrastructure that's down there right now? So there's been a long talk, and after going through the machine and looking at everything, this machine is not going to shake like it ever has before. It is very structurally sound. So with the vibration sensors that were installed, I think about 2 years ago, and the work that's being completed now, we feel that the machine's going to run really true and very smooth. So the recommendation now is to stiffen it, make it that it can't shake around. So I guess in the past, those stabilizer arms are almost sacrificial because they didn't want the concrete itself to take the brunt of the abuse.
Just so you realize, this is like 11% of the project total overrun, 11% bar.
Who came up with this?
The contractor that did the work, the machinist that was down in the pit, after he looked at the whole machine and re-machined it all, he's the one that said, hey, listen, I've been in a couple of these units, and this needs to get done. For one, right now the stabilizer arms are down at like a 30-degree angle, and he said, we can't have that. It has no strength, which once again goes back to it being sacrificial, but he's saying, we don't want it sacrificial at all. We want it to be rigid. So that's why I understand we did a lot of homework up front, and we did a lot of brainstorming. This wasn't caught.
Well, yeah,
We
because
knew it was an
Comande
issue.
said that we're not gonna have anything where this is it, we'll be good.
How do we know the vibrations is gonna be good to go if we don't start the machine up and see where we're at? Because we always say we're not gonna, you know what I mean? But there's not 100% guarantee that the
There's not,
vibration.
and to be clear, this is not a necessity. This is just a recommendation. Will the machine run the way it is? Absolutely. But by doing this, we have taken care of all the variables. There's nothing left on our water that we can even address if we wanted to. So that's why it's being recommended that we've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. This is it. There's nothing left we can do. Everything's been refurbished. Once again, to further compound the situation, you know, we had done a lot of investigating on this unit prior to starting construction. And when we got down in there, the machinist was done, and we were adjusting the wicket gates, and he said, it's not right, something's wrong. So it's called an eccentric pin, and basically it's a bolt with a cam on it. And that's what adjusts the wicket gate opening and closing. Every time we opened the gates and shut them, the gates were going to a different position because the mating surface of that eccentric pin was worn out. We didn't know that. We had done a lot of investigating and didn't catch that. So he actually refurbished it, which wasn't even a part of the initial scope, refurbished it. Now the gates are opening and closing exactly the way they should. So that was another thing. You can do as much homework as you can, but
I understand.
to really get in there.
To Candy's point, so without rewatering and starting that unit up, we're not gonna really know what's going on with vibration. If we did that first, just hear us out, and we did this next time we had to get in there to do, you know, PM or whatever it is, you know, on a budget year, is there a chance of catastrophic failure?
We had that conversation. Is there a chance? Of course, there's always a chance.
Of course, but is there, if we did this $10,000, is there 1% chance of, you know, catastrophic failure versus 11% chance, or
Yeah.
what are we talking about here? What the old alarm said?
If we watered it up and run it, I would say we have a very good chance that nothing's going to happen. So once again, it's not necessarily that this needs to be done. It's just a recommendation. So to your point, one option would be to water it up and run it, see where we stand, and then revisit this down the road.
But is it cheaper because he's already in there and it's dewatered?
Yes, his scaffolding's still set up down there, everything's ready to go. This is time and material again, he feels that this can be done much cheaper, provided we don't find any hiccups. So that's why he left the $10,000.
And this is the last thing left in that pit,
Yes,
underwater.
there's
Well,
nothing.
unless he finds, if there's hiccups, then,
But once again, if there's a hiccup, it can't exceed 10,000. We're saying we did time and material, not a bid, in an effort to try to save money, not to exceed 10,000.
I have nothing else, thanks.
I know that your budget was over, you cleared it up with taking some things out, so where's the money gonna come from for this?
We can, once again, revisit the budget and remove some more things. We still have, for instance, just shoot from the hip here, a significant amount of money in transmission distribution that we have not touched and we probably won't. I think there's like 75,000 in there, so we can take some money out of that, but we're not gonna get there. We're not gonna get there.
I guess what worries me is we're not even, we got a few months here yet to go before the end of the fiscal
Yeah,
year.
Yeah.
my big thing, Scott, is when you dewatered it this time, how much worse was the shape than the last time? Was it in any worse shape? Because we fixed it the last time we were in there as well. So
The
was it,
stabilizer arms were broke again.
they were broke again?
They were broke again,
Okay.
yeah.
That's my, because I know when we went in there, they were broke the first time.
Yeah.
When you went in the second time, they were broke again.
Yep. And actually, one time I re-welded them. I went down there and had my little buzz box and welded them up the best I could, so it's every time,
Okay.
but
So is it integrity in the steel or just how they're mounted?
I don't think it's an integrity thing. What he's saying too is the way they're mounted is incorrect. Right now, they're inboard, like nearest the wood bearing that just got replaced. He said that's not right, they need to be outboard where they can take the brunt of the torque, because there's a lot of torque on that as well.
they're not configured right. They're not,
True, and I
a couple of
think-
years ago, we talked about it.
Right.
I looked at it when we were going through it, and I told Scott, not that Scott, Klabundy.
Yes.
I said, this is just not right. I mean, if you look at the centrifugal force, you look at everything you do, as an engineer especially, and they're just not, they're not in the right location. It's like taking an arm and putting it in a location and then pushing on it in the wrong direction.
Right.
You know, so that's why, one of the things, whether we do it now or later, is immaterial. We need to get it done at some point, because it's just flat out wrong.
Yeah.
The only hesitation I
Why
have,
didn't they put that in?
the only hesitation I have is, to me, that is the weak link rather than the concrete wall. Or something else. That's my only hesitation of it, is that is the weak link versus breaking something else.
Yeah, you want a controlled failure point, is what you try to have, in anything. You want,
Right.
you don't, you want something you can replace. A cotter pin is a
Right.
perfect.
That would be ideal, would be a cotter pin or something, right? But I mean, in this case,
Right.
it's obviously our stabilizer arm.
Yes, and we had that same talk. Like, right now, the stabilizer arms are kind of sacrificial, but because those are, the vibration sensors are down there now, the machine will shut itself off if vibration gets too high. So therefore, having a weak link, we don't really need a weak link anymore, because the machine will never get to the point where it's gonna shake the wall apart. It'll shut down before that ever happens. So we have that instrumentation now. We
I
didn't
think
have
if-
that before.
I think if you decide to water it up and take an evaluation approach, I don't think there's any real problem with doing that, but, then.
Cost-wise.
Yeah, cost-wise, that's the problem.
Yeah, but I guess where I was going is that you schedule it down the road in your regular,
Yeah.
PM, like you said. You know you're gonna dewater, you gotta go in and do the inspection, and you just know you have certain types of jobs you do. I did this before with the oil refineries. We'd go into a piece of equipment, and you had a certain estimated amount of work that you knew just from past experience you were gonna do. But we always had extra work, because when you cleaned it out and you went in and looked, you had extra cracking, you had this, you had that, and so you went in and you did it. And so there's always an amount. Now, whether it's the 11%, 10%, you don't want those kind of numbers, but, that's, a lot of PM is what you get out of it, the
I think,
maintenance.
Four's been a beast. if we can find a 10 grand in this budget here, where we're there, I would feel more comfortable, with those arms fixed, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, like I said earlier, we have money in transmission distribution that we can transfer into it, but I don't exactly have the correct numbers in front of me yet. I know we have a lot, but I don't know what exactly. It's roughly 75,000, I think is a safe bet that's locked in that budget item, but I don't have the exact numbers.
Regardless of the decision, we got to have that watered up for the runoff, because that is one of the more important machines for efficient generation. I
That's
mean,
what
it
money
really
maker.
does, it produces good energy.
Yeah, and on that note, so part of the eccentric pins being goggled out, every time we turn the machine on, it would make different power. And we couldn't figure out what it was. We thought there was maybe some slop in the governor arm. Turns out it was those eccentric pins this whole time that were just letting the gates move different every time. So that was something, we've done a lot of homework, but we missed it going into it, and it's fixed now.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion?
I'll motion that we approve Sturgeon Falls Hydro Unit 4 repairs, change order number 1, not to exceed $10,000.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
I'm gonna vote no, and the reason being is I think we should work it into a PM, a preventative maintenance.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Mararo?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
No. I agree with Brett.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. We'll move on to approval Sturgeon Falls Hydro Plant doors.
Okay, so, guys will come up again. We're asking to be able to replace those old wooden doors that are on both ends of the unit. Actually, Scott pulled a print, and I believe I gave it to you in the packet, which actually shows garage doors. I don't know where this was back in the 50s. Anyway, Scott, why don't you explain why you're asking for those, for the garage style door?
So right now, we've got the two 5-bolt doors at each end, and they're rotted, and they don't seal up for anything. And the biggest problem we got right now is bugs. The bugs get in there, and they get into the generators. We clean the generators as best we can, but the generator's spinning, and it's like a bug in your windshield, and it splatters on there, and the biggest problem with generators is heat. So we do the best we can to clean it. A few years ago, they brought a company in that did a cryo cleaning, used liquid nitrogen, clean the generators, so they're in decent shape right now. We want to keep it there. And the crew, and especially Ralph, have done a fantastic job cleaning windows and putting screens up. The building is sealed except for the doors. It's kind of the last thing to make sure that we get it.
But in the summertime, you can't shut them doors when it gets too hot, or them machines are gonna overheat, so
Right,
the bugs
so
are,
we're gonna build a big frame, a screen for the outside.
okay.
You know, that's just a removable screen. That's just something we're gonna do after the doors are installed.
Yeah, 'cause you wanna make sure them doors are not sealed in
Yeah, for sure.
the
Yeah.
heat. You know, where them other doors, like you're saying, they're old or whatever, but they still are letting air, no air in
A
there.
little much air in.
A little much air in, yes.
Yeah.
But that, just, make sure that the guys make sure in the summertime that that's done properly, because and I know what's gonna happen. The machines will not take that heat.
No.
In the cool winters, they're probably not good with these doors right now.
Right. Well, the generator's making it.
There's so much heat in there
Take a lot of
Yeah,
heat.
You get ice issues, things like that by those doors because of that?
Ice?
Yeah.
Not really, no.
Okay.
No, it doesn't really let much weather in, to be honest. It's more of a bug issue in the summer, when the mayflies hatch, and every day you come in there and it's just, the floor's crawling. There's so many mayflies on the floor, and, it's just good to keep it out of the equipment.
Is this in the budget?
Yes,
Is this gonna get rid of your trip hazard?
yes.
That's a major point. Yeah, when I did that tour and I looked at those doors, I thought, this is crazy. It's,
We had a stack of old pictures and this photo was in it, it's like, gosh, why, we could, yeah, why not? So that's what started the conversation.
Thanks, Scott.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that the new hydro doors be purchased from Delta Door for a price not to exceed $6,714.
support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
We'll move on to approval, memorandum of understanding, City of Norway and the IBEW Supervisor Employees Local Union Number 906. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an official action that we would take. We spent the better part of a couple months talking about conditions with Mr. Ball, who is looking to retire. And at this point, these are all the conditions in this memorandum of understanding with the union that we talked about and agreed to. And so what we would do is, if approving this, it also rolls into the contract that officially would start July 1st, 2021. So actually, all this language would roll right into the new contract. And we've had conversations. Now, if you want to have any more detailed conversations about, or details of those provisions, I would suggest
We have to go
going
into
into
closed
a
session.
closed session.
Were there any questions that anybody would want to go into closed session?
I have none.
Good? Good? Rico? Good. All right. All right, do I have a motion?
Make a motion that resolution 2021-04 be approved.
Support.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Who's second?
Jeff.
Addresses from the audience. Anyone wishing to address the council on any item of will be unmuted and given an opportunity to make their comments. For participants on Zoom, you can use the raise your hand feature and the host will initiate the unmute. For telephone participants, hit *9 to initiate a request to speak. State your name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person.
There's no comments.
No comments? We'll move on to mayor council comments. Scott?
Mr. Anderson, the parking, is that done now? Citywide parking at night?
Yes.
The winter
we are-
parking?
As of April 1st, we're back on the streets.
Okay, just want to put that out to public so they know. And it's all-
Reminder on that is, this is the time that we start cranking on people to get off the boulevards.
Yes. And also pick up the garbage that's left out all over winter and,
Yeah.
you know, reminder to people, there's people out walking with their dogs, you know, in this nice weather now. There is ordinances out there that you have to clean up after your dog. You can't just allow it to go to your neighbors and do its business and come back home and be clean. That's all I got for tonight.
Brett?
I got a couple things. The museum is trying to open up again and be operational, so they're looking for volunteers. That group is trying very hard to open, which is, I think, a good thing.
Yeah.
Another one is at the Parks and Recs meeting, we did talk about the multi-field again, and that's in conversation still. It's not moving a whole lot, other than conversation at this point. You know, I think we gotta get together with that group and some members from the Parks and Rec before we go any further with it. I think that there's a lot of details that have to be worked out with it.
Yeah, like cost.
Right, cost is one. The baseball tournament, July 22nd, that's a big event for our area. I just want to put that out there. That group is working real hard at that. And then another one, a Boy Scout is going for his Eagle Scout by trying to clean up the camping sites down at the dam, which many people don't even know are there. So he's gonna try to clean them up to try and get his Eagle Scout, and he's gonna work with Mead and Hunt and, the FERC compliance and try and do that. So I just wanna say thanks to that young gentleman for trying to do that.
That's awesome.
That's all I have.
All right. Jeff?
Nothing, thanks.
Rico? I have nothing. Mr. Anderson?
Just tonight was the first night that we've been back for a while. It was good to see everybody here. We're going to be slowly getting back into hopefully normal operations with COVID. I know that it's still going to have some patience to do with it. We are trying the hybrid approach here. We have a Zoom camera, the channel 7, like I mentioned earlier. We're going to have it through our regular means because of especially the microphones. So I'll be chatting with someone who's online, and we'll find out how they heard the sound and everything, see how it went. But we'll try to make continual improvements to it, to the presentation. I think like we've been doing that with our boards and committees as well. Works well down in the small area, just say that. But up here, it'll be trial and error. So if people, when they see this, or experience it, just have some patience. We gotta get feedback and gotta work it out, some stuff. That's about it. I was just, going off of what Mr. Pop said about spring. I put it in the newsletter. I always put it in the newsletter because this is the time of year everybody gets out. But, please pick up after your dog. Please keep your dog on a leash. Please get off the boulevards because it does tear up the boulevards. Those are types of things. Pick up your trash. These are the things that we try to do for spring cleanup. Just get in a good habit now. So myself or the police chief, we're not having to be the bad people in out there.
Are our dumpsters back?
Dumpster has been back, yes.
Okay.
We've had it back, it's been a couple weeks now, and it's been well used, so.
Good.
Yeah.
I had one other thing too before I forget. Scott, at some point, can you get together with Rico you might want to take a tour of the dam?
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah. So,
It's been a while.
yeah.
I have another thing too. Ray, how are we doing with,
Call me, I'll go
like,
back on with you.
cars with that electrical station that we have? Are we having?
We're getting some cars in. We don't get a lot of revenue, the numbers
Yeah.
aren't very impressive, but we are getting pretty regular, we'll get a car and then.
I couldn't believe when I was on vacation last week, the amount of electric cars down there. I
Yeah.
down south, unbelievable.
Yeah, it's coming. It's only gonna increase.
Yeah.
So.
I registered for my EV Hummer. 2024. The delivery date.
It might be under 100 grand by then.
94, I think it was listed.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Grant, did you have anything?
I did, a little bit of a procedural issue. I asked council, just as Mr. Kramer made a comment about the Old Crest sale that was done, and I indicated that this would, the typical policy, procedure, policy issues associated with land sale would be incorporated. I wasn't involved in the offer or the negotiation or discussion that was done up, but the actual sheet that was presented by Mr. Gordon references that it contains all issues or all oral or written agreements, and part of that written agreement. That written agreement doesn't reference the policy of our council or policy of our city regarding the sale. So my concern with the motion that was made was just simply to approve the sale price of $15,000. If council wishes to approve it to be crystal clear, I think it's important to perhaps do a motion to reopen issue number, or item number 13, if council so wanted to do, and then simply clarify that as per the acceptance as per our policy with that reversionary language. If council doesn't want to do that, leave it as is. But I think it's important just to make sure it's crystal clear, because I don't know what Mr. Gordon portrayed or presented to these folks during the process of this negotiation. My concern would be that as I prepare the deed, I provide the reversionary language and they get a surprise.
Right.
I think it's very important to have it up front. I don't know what was included on what the discussion entailed, but the written purchase proposal that says, hey, this is everything. I want our motion and agreement on our side to be crystal clear because it was listed at X, I think it was the offer was a bit below that asking price. So I think that policy should be referenced in that motion. I think it's important to clarify. So if council wishes to do that, I think it's a motion to reopen agenda item number 13, and have a motion, have a vote on it, and then
Number 12.
clarification of motion on that.
Do I have a motion to go back and revisit number 12?
13.
I make a motion, we go back and revisit number
Oh, I must be
13,
looking at the old one.
number 13, on a property.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Lawyers.
Could we add that to our motion then? That's
So,
how I-
you want to add it to your motion?
Yeah, I'll add it to my motion that we include the city purchase agreement language in this agreement.
Yeah, our policy language.
Our policy language.
Regarding the 2-year build and reversion language.
Yeah, our purchase language that is involved.
Is there a square footage limit?
If that sounds good to you, Grant?
Is there a square
That's
footage limit
good.
in there too? Is there a square footage limit in the purchase language?
So the clean
I don't
version,
think so.
council would approve the $15,000 proposal for purchase of that property pursuant to our Norway city sale policy. That includes the 2.
Land policy.
language.
What Grant said.
Support.
Okay. Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
And with that,
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
God.
Carlson, for bringing
Thank
that
you
up.
for catching that.
That could be, something down the line, or it could not be.
better to be clear.
Yep.
And I, from the purchaser's perspective, plus I want to make sure that the market perspective is more importantly for us.
Is that all you had, Grant?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We're going into closed session after this meeting. When we come out, we will not take any action. We will just adjourn. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
I make a motion to go into closed session.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
You got Zoom cut, Ray?